All right, welcome to another episode of Athletics for Life podcast. We're doing things a little differently this week. This week, I call it freestyling. I don't have any notes. Don't really have any plans other than 3 topics I want to talk about this week. Other than that, I'll just get it out there now. We've got a special guest coming on next week. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then before we dive on in, like I said, we're doing things a little different this week. I'm going to do my spiel that I normally do at the end now so that I don't forget it. So if you really like this podcast, you want to see more of the podcast, you want to help us grow, we're always looking for sponsors. So if that's something that interests you, shoot me an email at m.short@thetorchgta.com. Also, you guys can use that email if you have any questions, comments, if you just want to chat. Sometimes I get lonely too. You can shoot me an email and I can help you with whatever it is or answer questions you might have. Okay, so let's move on to a couple of the subjects I wanted to talk about today. The first one, if you guys follow the podcast, obviously you know that I have ulcerative colitis, and if you follow MMA or the UFC, you heard some disheartening news over, I think it was the weekend, but probably last week. I found out Saturday, and that's Georges St-Pierre, our Canadian MMA hero, was initially supposed to be setting up a fight to unify the middleweight title. I believe the guy that holds the interim belt is Robert Whittaker. Anyway, Dana White, UFC president, came out and said that Georges St-Pierre will be out for a minute. And then that kind of raised some speculation. So I looked into that, and so here's something that I found on sportsnet.ca. And it says, UFC president Dana White says Georges St-Pierre is out with colitis, which could leave him on the sidelines for a while. And this is Dana White's quote. "They called me yesterday, and I think it's out that he has colitis." Dana White goes on to say, so he's out for a minute. So that being said, I see that, so he's out for a minute, and I just kind of chuckle a little bit thinking, Dana White has no idea what colitis is. But I held out some hope. I was hoping he had a different kind of colitis. He didn't have ulcerative colitis, because there's a whole spectrum of them. You can have ischemic colitis, ulcerative colitis like I have. Runners get it. It's just depends on the situation. I found out one day that if you take too much pre-workout, you can get it. So be warned to all you people that take pre-workout out there. Yeah, there's a cost for that, a biological cost, just like there is for everything. So I was hoping it was something like that. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Because Georges St-Pierre actually came out and wrote a post on Facebook discussing his ulcerative colitis. So here's the big quote from his page. Okay, here we go. "I now understand the health issues that I had during my last training camp. I hope my condition would improve after the fight, but unfortunately it got worse, and I had to go straight to the hospital for colonoscopy when I came back from vacation last Wednesday. The diagnosis is ulcerative colitis, and I am now taking medication that will hopefully appease the symptoms. My health is my number one priority right now. I'm still a very happy man. Thanks for your support." So that being said, before I start tackling my own thoughts, just want to wish Georges St-Pierre the best of luck with his condition. I hope he gets better. I hope he understands how serious that the matter is, unlike what I did and ignored my doctors for the most part. But yeah, so hopefully he gets better. There's been a lot of talk as to what caused his sickness. I've seen a lot of the internet trolls go crazy on some of the UFC posts. So I'm just going to get this out right now, and you trolls don't know what you're talking about. Ulcerative colitis is no excuse. It's he's not ducking the interim or the unification bout. He's not ducking anyone at middleweight. It's a serious illness. So now on to my thoughts about it. Well, that's pretty insane that someone and I'm going to use quotes here, someone as healthy as Georges St-Pierre gets diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. I think it goes to show you that any of us can get it. Like I said, it's serious. It's kind of scary. It seems like he's got his head on straight, as he says his health's the number one priority. If I type into Wikipedia here, because I was always kind of curious on his age. I can't remember how old he is. Most people get diagnosed when they're, I think, like between 16 and 26 or something like that. And I gotta do some quick math here because my head's not on straight today. Georges St-Pierre is 36, so that's actually a pretty late diagnosis for it, and it starts to make me think, what caused it? What's going on, George? I think back to my own experience with it, and I think back to some of the dangers of the world of mixed martial arts, especially that weight cutting. I know, especially for me, I was willing to do anything to make that weight class, and I wonder if the circumstances of GSP going up to middleweight is what did it. I don't know if I said that right. Anyway, I think that's what contributed. You're gaining all this mass, you're trying to get as big as possible, and then you're turning around and being like, you know what, psych, we're going to lose as much weight as we can to make that weight class and then put it back on really quick. It's quite dangerous, to be honest. So I wonder if that had a factor. I wonder if supplements had a factor. I'm not talking steroids for all you internet trolls out there. I'm talking creatine, protein, glutamine, although I've done some research on glutamine. It's actually quite good for you. But stuff like that, because you never know. It's got me wondering. I mean, that's a professional athlete that was diagnosed in the midst of his career. I know there's been other athletes that are diagnosed with ulcerative colitis or other chronic diseases, but I mean, ulcerative colitis at 36 in the prime of your career, that's a tough one to swallow. I know it's no stranger that athletes get diagnosed with chronic diseases. I mean, how many hockey players in the last 5 years have had heart conditions, or football players dropping dead, stuff like that. Like, it's scary. We're human beings are fragile, and at the same time we're tough. It's this weird little mix of stuff. But I truly hope GSP gets better quick. We see him in the octagon again, if ever. But yeah, it seems like he's got his health as number one priority. That's how it should be, and I can't see him giving up on sports. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next. So best of luck, George. The next topic I want to talk about. Let's see. I've got two on my mind. Let's go with... Okay. So previous episodes, we've talked about designing your own training program. I assume that if you're just about to start working out and you need suggestions for a training program, you're very new to the fitness industry. And I believe I've said it before, but I'll say it again. If you're brand new, I always recommend getting a trainer. If you can't afford a trainer, because I know they're pricey, and if you have a chronic disease, you're probably paying for medication as well. So all that stuff adds up. And you're like, hey, Mike, like, I just don't have the money. I'm just going to YouTube it. That's great. Make sure you videotape yourself doing the exercises to make sure you have proper form. All right? Because there's nothing worse than being like, yeah, I'm gung-ho to get started on my fitness program. You go to do a squat and you bust your knee. That's not good. So that's number one. Make sure that if you can't afford a trainer, you're videotaping yourself. You're making sure you're doing proper form. There's programs out there that can help you out, and eventually I'm going to get to the point where I'll start reviewing some of them, the free ones, that is. But yeah, so if that's not an option, or get a friend to help you out. Hopefully you've got a friend that knows what they're talking about. Be careful, but that's allowed. However, if you have the money for a trainer, like I said, I highly suggest you get a trainer. They're supposed to be the ones that are trained in the industry. They know all their workout routines. They know the form. They're there. They're supposed to be helping you. However, there's always And, however, am I using proper English? I don't really know. There's always a flip side to it, though. Most trainers are good, but it's like anything. You have good doctors, you have bad doctors. You have good musicians, you have bad musicians. Or, hey, here's another way to look at it. You have rock and roll musicians, you have jazz musicians. Same industry, different genre. It's no different with trainers. Do your homework. Talk to the trainer before you sign up. This is probably the most important thing that people don't tell you when you walk into a gym and you say you want personal training. It's always they stick you with whatever trainer is available. I've seen it. You say yes, you get 6 months, probably $3,000 into your program. I'm just throwing out that number, by the way. But you get a significant chunk of money into your program, and then you realize that this trainer didn't have the same goals in mind for you, doesn't really know how to get you to your goals, and then you're stuck with them because you signed that contract. Talk to your trainer. Make sure they know what they're doing. One of my pet peeves, and I'm sure I'll get flack for this, I'm sorry for all you CanFit Pro trainers, but if you can, get a trainer who's been to university for either kinesiology, even college, university. Just make sure they've had that instruction. Before I went to university, I actually passed the CanFit Pro assessments with zero, and I mean zero, experience, zero real knowledge. And I thought that I knew exactly what I was doing because I got my certification. This is not the case. This is tried to be rectified by kinesiologists. Once they graduate, they have to get registered now. But that's still in the process, so you can't really rely on that just yet. But you can protect yourself still. Talk to the trainer, see if they know what they're talking about. Don't be afraid to question them, fact check them, and then ask their experiences. Because a lot of the time, you might find that there's this one personal trainer who has the best reputation ever, but his specialty is with bodybuilders or people who want to get big, bulky muscles. Yeah, he can probably do that best in the business. However, if your goal is either to lose weight or you're just trying to cope with your symptoms through physical activity with proper form, might not be the best guy to go to. There's other people out there that can help you. So talk to the trainer, do your background, just take care of yourself. Because remember that at the end of the day, these guys just want to get paid for the most part. There are some really good trainers. I don't want all of them to start hating me. There are some really good trainers out there that do care. But I think the best way to top off this little segment is with a story. How else? I'm full of them. Just to reiterate my point of doing your homework on your personal trainers. I'll leave the gym name out of it. I'm not going to mention any names. However, I did a little stint as a personal trainer, and I remember I was working one week, and I got a new client. It was passed on to me because his previous personal trainer ended up actually leaving, and he needed a new one. So luck of the draw, he became my client, and I started working with him. And the first thing I did with all my clients, new or old, every so often I would check in to see what their goals were. I'd check in to see their progress. If their goal was to lose weight, are we losing the weight? If we want to gain weight, are we gaining the weight? Are we gaining the weight in the proper places? So I met with this individual and I asked him what his goals were. And he said he wanted to lose weight. And I just looked at him and I went, really? Because like, you're, for lack of a better term, you're a thick fellow. And now he wasn't obese, he was thick. He said, nope, I came in here, I wanted to lose weight from day one. I went, okay, kind of boggled my mind a little bit. So I asked him, I said, what have you been doing before this? Because I'm looking at your progression and your weight's going up. He goes, I don't know what's going on. He goes, I want to lose weight. He goes, my last trainer had me deadlifting 3 sets of 5 for like max weight, and I'm eating 2 chicken breasts and spinach and cauliflower and bread and just enormous meals. I go, okay, well, there's your problem. This guy was on a 100% bodybuilding program, and not the type of bodybuilding program where he's getting ready for competition. He was on a I'm going to gain huge amounts of size program. Immediately I looked at this guy, I go, we got to switch this up. And it was that day, because we had a session right after, he kind of saw that his trainer had steered him wrong. I put him on a treadmill, and he was huffing and puffing. I hadn't even set it to a jog yet. We did a circuit workout, and it was a struggle because he'd never done that kind of work before. And it was just some good reiteration that the previous 6 months that he spent with a guy who he thought was helping him was actually harming him based on his goal. So that's important to note. Make sure those goals are shared between you and your trainer. Like I said, if you can't get a trainer, get on YouTube. Make sure you are recording yourself. One thing, I don't really say use forums too much. There are a couple good forums out there that you can upload your videos and they'll help you with your form. Reddit has a few good subreddits for that. Again, be careful. Double check everything. And if all else fails, you can always shoot me an email. I'm more than willing to help. But realistically, nothing beats getting a good personal trainer. Okay, so we're going to talk for one more little thing I wanted to talk about, but we're going to take a short break and then we'll be back. And yeah, we'll end it at that point. So give me a couple minutes, we'll be back. All right, we're back. Last little bit of the podcast here. Like I said, this week is a week where we're trying new things all around. Hopefully you guys stuck around after that break. One more little thing to talk about, and then we'll call it that for this week. And then, yeah, I'll see you the next time we come around. So last thing I wanted to talk about. So I mentioned earlier that next week we're going to have a guest. This guest will be my wife. Her name is Laura, and she helped me through everything. That's important because as I was talking to her about being on the podcast, she was asking what kind of things we were going to talk about, and I was giving her the lowdown of the podcast. And when it came time to talk about the physical activity, she turned to me at one point and she went, "Yeah, you were obsessed with physical activity when you first started." And that got me thinking, and I realized that, yeah, I was. And when I say obsession, I'm talking about like it was all I thought about, it was all I did. If I wasn't resting, I was looking up new routines and jumping all over the place with physical activity. And got me thinking that might be another trap that people fall into, is this obsession with physical activity. As soon as something starts to work, I know I'm guilty of it, you start getting obsessed with it. And that's no good, because just like anything else, you can do too much of it, especially physical activity. Too much physical activity, you can overtrain. I know there's guys like C.T. Fletcher and other motivational guys that say, yeah, overtraining's a myth. But I've experienced it. I've gotten sick because of it. Maybe it doesn't exist to him. Maybe he rests properly. Maybe he eats properly. Maybe his body absorbs nutrients properly. But that's not the case for all of us, especially if you have a chronic disease. Like, I hope you can see now that this theme keeps reoccurring, that with a chronic disease, you can't do things like everyone else necessarily. I say necessarily because if you would have asked me that years ago, I would have been like, yeah, I can't do things normal people can do. But if you ask me now, I'd say, yeah, I can do anything someone without disease could do. I might have to modify it a little bit. I might have to change the pathway to get there. But I full-heartedly believe that my disease won't hold me back. That being said, you can get obsessed with physical activity. You can wear your body out, and then you're going to stop doing your workouts. You stop doing your workouts, coping with symptoms becomes a little bit harder, then it becomes much harder, and then you're back to square one. You got to start again. And as we all know, starting's hard, so let's avoid that. how do we combat that? Well, first step is writing down a plan. Now, last episode I talked about signing up for a Spartan race. That's still a go. The thing is, I didn't just think, okay, I got to train for a Spartan race. I'm going to run 8K tomorrow. And then after I'm done running the 8K, I'm going to do 100 pull-ups. Then I'm going to do 100 push-ups. No, it doesn't work that way. I wrote a plan that's progressive. So today I might do 10 pull-ups, 10 chin-ups, 10 squats, so on and so forth. And then slowly increase that number, slowly do more and more until I get to my goal of 100 pull-ups, 100 push-ups, 100 dips, 100 squats, whatever it may be. Likewise for running. I'm not just going to go out and run 8K. I might go out today and run 2 kilometers or 1 kilometer, and then next week do 2.5. Eventually get to 5 kilometers and increase that way. So that's rule number 1. Have a plan. Rule number 2. Think about something else every now and then. Like I said, I'm guilty of it. Physical activity starts to work, and all you start thinking about is, okay, what workout can I do next? What's up next? Is this working? You start getting in your own head. I found the best way to combat this is you pick up a hobby for when you're done your physical activity and you need to think about something else. My wife will kill me for saying it, but play video games, draw, anything to get your mind off of it until your next workout or your next meal or whatever it is that you're becoming obsessed with. The way I've done this is I found my way back into playing guitar and bass again. I probably stopped playing for 3 or 4 years, got obsessed with my physical activity after all this time, and recently started playing again and forgot how much I loved playing guitar and bass. And it's a great outlet for me. Now I can do my workouts and I can leave it at the gym. I can go running outside, come home, relax, have my shower, have my meal, and then next thing you know, I'm playing guitar or schoolwork. That's been another great, I'd say distraction, but it's more like physical activity is my release from school. But it's been something that consumes a lot of my time, which is actually a good thing. I'm not doing 3 workouts a day because I'm bored. I'm doing 1 workout a day right now, maybe 2 as I get closer to the race. But when I'm not doing that, I'm doing stuff working towards my master's thesis, or like I said, playing guitar. So find that hobby that interests you, that can provide a further escape. That's one thing I found when I picked up my guitar again was, physical activity helped me cope with disease. But then I was finding the longer it was since my workout, the more I'd start to think about my disease again in the beginning. And now it's not so much a thing. But especially in the beginning, the longer it was for my workout, the more I started to worry about my disease symptoms coming back and worrying, and it was consuming me. When you have a hobby, there's not even a chance for that to happen. Now, I think back, if I would have played guitar back then, it might have been a different story, because you do your workout, you get the physiological benefits, the mental benefits, and then as the symptomatology starts to creep back into your mind, you're already moving on to your next hobby. So maybe if I would have played more guitar, I would have thought less about my symptoms. Or if I would have spent my time drawing, or whatever it is your hobby is, it can take your mind off of that stuff. So try that out. I guarantee you that it'll make you feel better. Besides, what do you got to lose? Spend more time on a hobby, do something cool, maybe learn a new song on guitar, or paint that picture you always wanted to paint. Whatever it is, just go out, give it a try. If you haven't gotten that message from this podcast yet, there you go. It's back at you. And so, that's it for me today. So like I said, just a little glimpse into the future. We've got a couple guests coming up. I'm still locking down details for a couple of them, but next episode, Laura she's going to be on here with me. She's my wife. She's going to be giving the perspective of supporting someone with disease, and I'm sure that'll be interesting for a lot of you. As well as she's a registered nurse, so she's got a background in dealing with people with disease. So I always find it interesting to see her outlook versus someone without that background. So just throwing it out there, her outlook versus the outlook of how my dad dealt with the disease. It was completely different, and it's just interesting to see. So I think that's going to be a very insightful conversation, and not one you guys are going to want to miss. So that's coming up next. We've got a couple other good surprises for you guys, but not ready to tell you just yet. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. Like I said, if you have questions, comments, concerns, or fingers crossed you might want to sponsor the podcast, shoot me an email, and that email is m.short@thetorchgta.com. So that's it for me, and until then, we'll see you next episode. Later.